and you can raise your hand and you can unmute yourself, or we can unmute you. You can put your camera on and you can ask a question. And we definitely will be using the chat as well. So please do feel free to write in the chat as we go through. And then finally, there will be a brief survey at the end. We always do surveys at the end of our webinars. And we really do value your feedback, and we read every single comment that comes through, and we use all of that feedback to better inform our offerings and our work for you.
Oops. Oh my.
Yes, so this is just a slide. This is a little bit different as if we were in a webinar. So in the reactions on your toolbar, you're able to raise your hand and lower your hand. And then this is just the arrow to the chat feature as well. So just wanted to let you know where you can find that in meeting format. Okay. Merve Lapus is the Vice President of Outreach and National Partnerships at Common Sense Media. And Merve, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your work and kind of how you got here?
Sure. So thank you very much for having me here tonight, this afternoon, all of the above for everyone here. I've been with Common Sense now for 12 years, and I've been working in ed tech for almost 20. A lot of my role has been really around developing programs to really identify where kids' learning gaps were, and being able to then design effective tech that was able to kind of help support, that learning growth. In that work, I learned a lot in kind of developing this work. I learned one, tech is great, but it's only as great as it is implemented and as there's buy-in for its value. And so how do we ensure that educators really understand that what technology can do, what's the purpose, what's its value, and what are the opportunities with it? And then the other being that I'm really into tech myself. Tech is moving so fast, and the implications of how we use technology is essentially ahead of really what most of us have been prepared for, and just the way that we're seeing how technology has grown. And some of those things have raised a lot of concern. Some of those things have really given us incredible promise and opportunity. And so in my work, I get to work really closely with school districts and communities across the country and now internationally to really understand, what does technology mean to kids and families? How is it either supporting the development for kids and families? And more so, how are we ensuring that we are understanding how technology works for us and not it using us? It's kind of one of our big areas of focus, and there's incredible opportunity with that. So happy to dive deeper into the discussions today, and especially answer any questions that might be out there. I can't say that I'll know all of them, but I can definitely point you in some good directions.
Great. Thanks, Merve. Great. We also have John and Kimberly Woods on the call today, and together they draw on their research and experience as parents to help other parents and guide them. Specifically, we're going to be talking about, they have a book called Mindful Screen Time, a reassuring guide to parenting screen time, preventing digital addiction, and the uses of technology for positive child development. So this is an area of interest for John and Kimberly, and we'd love for you to take a couple of minutes and talk to us a little bit about your publications and your brand a little bit.
So I'll start. So thanks so much for having us. We're really happy to be here. So John and I were high school sweethearts. We've been together for about 25 years now. And I would say if you were to ask me 5 years ago if I would be doing anything like this, I would say absolutely not. It's completely different. Like my bio says, I worked with animal rescue and animal care for about 20 years, and I still do today, more of a volunteer basis. But we're just average people, average parents. We are the Guilty Parents. It's kind of the brand that started. It's a new brand based on being guilty. We have a young son, and this kind of came about a year ago. We were actually having several heated debates with family and friends and colleagues about this parenthood, and a lot on screen time and technology. And before we had our own child, we were kind of very focused on more of like the negative things about it. And then once we had our own child, it really opened to our eyes, and I got really into technology and its uses and how positive it can be. But I still found that as our son, started, turning 2 and showing interest in TV, talking to friends and everything, they were very kind of shameful, like, oh, you can't do that. That kind of this whole negative stigma around it. So I started doing research online about it and looking for books on kind of focusing on the positive, and I just really couldn't find it out there. So my husband, John, has been a writer and researcher for years and years. So we kind of worked together to research the topic and kind of came about a positive way to talk about the subject.
Yeah, and as she mentioned, I was in university for a really long time. So digging in and research and stuff like that is not new to me, but the whole technology thing is just coming up in the era that we did, essentially graduating high school in '99. I've been to university essentially the entire 2000s, where you used to have to go to the library in '99, 2000. And then my most recent degree, I finished in 2015, where I didn't even touch the library. So it's really interesting to see how technology changed just the way we learn and everything. So I've always been interested in that. And then I do have a background prior to what I'm doing now, where I used to build websites and make presentations for companies and stuff. So it is a familiar space, but as Kim mentioned, we had a child quite late in life. So as far as what technology was to children and their development, that was fairly new to us a few years ago. And then looking at the products that were out there instead of a whole lot of negativity, we just kind of wanted to flip the narrative a little bit, which is what spawned our brand. And we have other books in the works, things like parents that maybe feel they work too much, or what do we feed our kids, and topics like that, not spending enough time with our children. And that's kind of what we're focused on, just trying to flip things to the positive, where we're all trying our best. Most of the time people are harder on themselves than they need to be. And just reassuring that we're all parents, we're all doing our best, and everything's okay. That's
Great. Thank you both so much. We're glad that you're here, all three of you, for sure. All right, so this is just one quick slide that I have, and we'll talk about a few things here, and then we're going to open it up and ask our panelists some of your great questions. We received many questions during the registration process, so we're going to answer your questions tonight. And then of course, if you have any, even if you didn't write a question beforehand, you're obviously very welcome, and we want you to ask our panelists tonight. So we're going to focus tonight on the healthy technology use for children. And in this digital world, as our panelists have mentioned, it may feel challenging for parents to monitor all that their children have access to online. That is for sure. I know I can appreciate that myself. And often there's negative associations to technology. And a recent study in 2020 by the American Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry found that on average, at that point, 8 to 12-year-olds were spending about 4 to 6 hours a day on screens, and teens up to 9 hours, right? And so we know that that was prior to the pandemic. So we know from personal experience that we've probably all spent a little bit more time on screens in the last couple of years, including our children too, right? Because they moved to this virtual world for schooling. So taking those numbers and I'm sure increasing them significantly. So with all that screen time, children may be exposed to violence, they may be exposed to sexual content, risk-taking behaviors, cyberbullying, misleading or accurate information may come up. They're on YouTube or any other social media site. Children may also suffer from sleep disturbance if they're using, that screen, too much screen time, especially before bed, moodiness, less reading because they're on the screen, perhaps looking at pictures, less physical activity when they're on the screen, and perhaps poor self-image and lack of confidence. I worked in a high school for many, many years, and then in an elementary middle school, and I can personally speak to these different components and what we've seen in kiddos over the years, and how disruptive that social media piece could be, for sure, in terms of the self-image, the cyberbullying. We've seen some negative things come our way in those areas. So all of this increased time, especially as John and Kimberly have mentioned, have left some parents worried feeling guilty that, they had to work here during this pandemic and I'm on the screen all day doing my work and I've got my kiddos out and about somewhere in the kitchen or the living room and they're on their screens all day, but I don't really know what they're doing because I'm busy here. So, it's been a difficult couple of years for sure. And so we know that parents have worried about that. And parents have also wondered, like, how do I really patrol this? How do I really know what my kids are watching? So, or engaging in, I guess. So, but we know that it's not all bad, right? And so that's what we're going to talk to our panelists about tonight, because technology really is a wonderful thing. And it can be very positive for children, for families. So we definitely want to explore that tonight. We want to spend some time talking about the concept of screen time versus screen use, and how we can focus on the how and why of what our children are engaging with online versus like tallying up the actual amount of time that they're spending on the screen. So we will definitely talk about how we can help our kids be good people online. Our kids in schools are learning about digital citizenship. And so I definitely want to take some time tonight to talk about that character development and, looking to help strengthen the virtues of like honesty and compassion and courage and gratitude and social justice, just a couple of things that come to mind. But, I think when we talk about strengthening those things for our kiddos, we might feel a little bit more positive about them being online and engaging with others, especially in that social media realm. So we'll definitely look forward to hearing from our expert panelists as they share their research and experiences on this topic and really guide us through this process tonight. So again, please do ask questions. And Karen's actually going to stop sharing so that we can see one another. And we're going to get into it. So a couple of folks, how do you like that? We're just going to dive right in. A couple of folks, when they registered, the concept again of screen time versus screen use came up. So I guess I just want to kind of punt this first topic of, can we talk about this? Can we have a discussion about how we can decipher between the two? So I don't know, Merv, do you want to get us started?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think one thing first is, as we look at some of this data, we've been doing a longitudinal study since 2013 just on the increase of screen time, and it goes, it's pretty highly aligned to some of the research you shared earlier. And the reality is, when you see that high number, you're like, what, 9+ hours? You also got to factor in that the way that our kids and even ourselves factor in the time we spend on things are oftentimes cumulative. We're looking at multitasking. So they might really spend 4 or 5 hours, but in that time, they're listening to music at the same time. They might be playing video games and the TV's on in the background. And when they're being asked these questions about how much time you spend watching TV or doing these things, and then it all comes up in total, it's a pretty high number. So, all that to be said, it is important to understand that our kids are multitasking and they're being exposed to many different things all at once. And so there is some of that, making sure that they are able to focus on things as they need to and understand when is multitasking all right, and when are other opportunities where you really need to focus. But as we come back to the main question around, especially the question around screen time, I think it is important to understand and recognize that not all screen time is created equal, right? There is the screen time where you oftentimes feel like, oh, it's just like mindless, binging on a Netflix show and just going episode. And they've built that so that it counts down 10, 9, play, or actually it says 10 seconds and then it just goes to 3, 2, 1, play. And they, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe just the beginning. And then you just get stuck into it. So it's very easy to fall into that kind of experience. We also know that majority of the ways that we interact and how we connect with each other, how we find information, like my kid is spending 2.5 hours straight on their screen right now. Oh, but they're actually reading an ebook. So knowing the value and the type of screen time is going to be very important. That means, as a parent, taking the time to understand what your kids are doing, or a caregiver as well. If you're a grandparent or someone who's supporting kids, like that time that they're spending, really understanding what they're doing with that time is going to be incredibly important. But then also active screen time. So if your child, if you have a little kiddo or slightly older, and they're watching content that you've been able to review and feel like, okay, this is actually going to be okay for them, but what are you doing to engage with them either during, like pressing pause, wait, what just happened there? Tell me what you think is going to happen next. Building some of those soft skills that we inherently get when we're, reading a book and we're asked, give us a summary. Like, how do you use that for a game that they're playing or a movie that they're watching or shows that they're watching? There are active ways that we can actually make what seems like passive screen time into an active form of engagement, especially with our young ones who are typically, hopefully watching shows that are appropriate for them, that are engaging with them on colors and numbers and experiences. Well, then how do you apply that into real life? And then the last thing I'll say to this before I pitch it over to my dynamic duo, John, Kim over here, as we also think about just the time that our, especially older kids might be spending, oftentimes we hear that, oh, they're spending so much time on there and, I just want to get them off. The reality is when we get them off, we're not giving them anywhere productive to go. We just want them off. But why are they also there? And the other reality is a lot of our kids, and in many of our communities, our kids aren't outside running around with their friends the way that we used to when we were growing up. When I was growing up, if the lights were not on yet, I'm still good. But once the light comes on, I need to run home and make sure I'm home, and that's okay. Our kids aren't growing up with that same type of experience in most neighborhoods, at least. And developmentally, they're supposed to be with their friends. And that's how they grow. That's how they find who are the people closest to them, who can they trust, how do they learn together. That is developmentally appropriate. And if they're not doing that, then they're going to be where their friends are at. And their friends are going to find spaces, social spaces. Those spaces are online. So if that is the new reality, or that is a reality to where some of our own comfort is keeping them home, then they're going to be where their friends are at. That's where they're supposed to be. So it's important for us to understand how those spaces work and how we can ensure that they're making smart decisions in the way that they talk to each other, collaborate with each other, and spend time with each other in those spaces, because those are their spaces. And I think one of my favorite quotes from a teen when we were doing some interviews a little bit ago, I asked them, like, so what do you think about this whole idea? And they said, my parents think that I'm addicted to my phone. I'm not addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to my friends. That's where they're at. So I'm going to hang out with them. I'm like, oh, touche. I'm
Got
there
it.
with you. So yeah. So, but let me hand it off to my colleagues over here, John and Kim. Love to hear your guys' side to the work.
Yeah, thanks, Merv. Yeah, I think Merv really kind of touched on it there, especially with the, when we were kids and the light was on, that was a sign, when to come in for dinner, when the night was over. But for our kids now, it's like in our book, we comment on how like the ping of the cell phone or the beep on the PlayStation is, okay, that's how my friend's contacting me. It's not them ringing, the doorbell anymore. And also when they're with the hours a day that our kids are spending on their devices, it's really about what are they doing on their devices. When we were young, it was, we were taking out that art sketchbook and we were drawing with our crayons and our felts, and we had that word search book and the Sudoku book, but now our kids are all doing it online. So when they're online, are they playing games? Are they doing arts? Are they talking to their friends? Are they being social, playing games with their friends? Are they reading ebooks or listening to audiobooks or music? There's so much more right in their hands and in their devices, in their pockets now that we never had. So as parents now, it's really kind of accepting the environment that our kids are growing up into and really kind of monitoring and knowing what it is they're doing.
It's the perception of things as we kind of go through and technology becomes more and more part of our environment. As Kim's mentioning and Merv was mentioning, it's really the quality over quantity. If I really have to choose one over the other, there's winter days, there's rainy days, there's times where, maybe they can't go outside. And the times have changed. Kids don't ring the doorbell anymore. They don't grab their baseball glove and go to the field anymore. In general, I'm a coach, I'm a basketball coach. And what I've seen happening now is essentially you have to organize events for kids. It's not like it used to be where you would just randomly show up and meet your friends. Now things are more and more organized. So with kids playing online and interacting online, that's just their natural meeting space, as Merv mentioned. They were at school all day. They're told when to get up. They're told, when to go to school. They're told what they're studying. They come home, they have chores to do and all this kind of stuff. And they just want to get online and relax and be with their friends for a bit. So, sometimes it's our perception of things like, oh, you've been on the screen for 2-3 hours, but the first half hour of that may have just been loading up and figuring out what they wanted to do with their friends and just talking about the same things we talked about when we were younger, except instead of standing on the street corner talking about sports and girls or boys or whatever, they're doing it on a social platform of some sort. So I think a lot of it is the perception. Prior to this meeting starting, we were talking about how technology used to really be viewed as a tool. Computers and laptops and everything were really just a tool to get things done. Well, now it's an environment that our kids live in. And that's where our role as parents really comes in. And we have to show them how to navigate the world that they're in, this digital online world, which is really unique to us because we didn't live in that world either, right? You know, this generation is the first generation that's coming up with the internet and everything already handed to them. Whereas we got to see the birth of the internet kind of grow with it. Nowadays, at 2-3 years old, they have the entire world at their fingertips. And there's a lot of good there, there's a lot of bad, and it's up to us as parents to kind of help them navigate that. So if there's anything, it's really the quality of it, I would say, is most important, and then sharing in the experiences with your kids and making sure that it's an open communication, an open dialogue of what they're learning, what they're doing. And you know, kids are super excited to talk about this kind of stuff. You know, our toddler, he watches truck videos and 4x4 videos and stuff like that. And if you get him talking about it, he'll ramble on about it. So you just really have to be engaged in that technological world that they're in.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. Both, all. So kind of going off of that, I mean, we're talking about focusing on, you know, quality of time. Can we help kind of hone in and help parents, you know, focus on strategies to help them kind of tap into the how? Like how do parents know? Like how do parents know what's good, what's not good? How do parents, like, can we talk a little bit to maybe ease people's fears about it and expand their knowledge of, you know, strategies that parents can access to help their kids with this process of quality?
I'm sure Merv has a lot of great information on this. One thing I just want to touch on, an interesting study that I came across while researching our book, is how much of a difference it made for kids to have a tech-based limitation versus a parent-based one. So just talking about tools, if you have a timer on a laptop or a tablet that's, you know, 30 minutes of video time, and that timer cuts off, well, there's no one for that kid to argue with at that point. But as a parent, if you come into the room and you're saying, oh, 5 more minutes and I'm going to come shut that off, it's perceived a little bit differently from the child's perspective. So that's just one of the more interesting things that they came across, I think, is putting it kind of on the tool itself to limit their usage. Obviously, you want to teach them what is an appropriate amount of time, and some kids will figure that out on their own. But you know, I'm interested what Merv has to say. I know he's done a lot of research on this kind of topic, and Kim might want to chime in afterwards as well. But go ahead, Merv.
Sure, thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think the reality is that, you know, currently, you know, so much of what we do now requires a screen to access. I mean, that goes from banking, that goes from social media, that goes to finding great videos on YouTube, to, in some cases, that's our primary television now. We're streaming on some kind of box or some, you know, voiceover, or what do they call it now? Trying to think of the exact term, but the Netflixes and the Hulus of the world. I mean, that's our primary way of streaming now. So in many ways, there's no getting away from it. That said, you know, sometimes, so I love what John shared, is this, you know, setting up some kind of like timers to help kind of that reminder, that cue. It's like, oh, okay, time's up. But alongside that same idea, sometimes it's even easier, as if you recognize, you know what, technology is such a big part of everything we do. Maybe it's not about saying, okay, at this time we stop, right? You've spent enough time on technology, and more so, these are the sacred times that we're going to hold that's specifically for us, to connect on what you did, to eat dinner together, if you guys can eat a meal together, to go out and play and to do certain things. Providing sacred times where we're not on devices together, so that's part of the role modeling aspect of it too, and doing things together, sometimes is going to be a lot more helpful versus just saying, okay, you can only be on for 2 hours today, you can only be on for like 4 hours today. We know that they're finding ways, and there's many ways that they're going to be on regardless. So let's find the sacred times. That said, when you transition away from a very fun and engaging experience on a tablet, a device, or a show, and then you transition them to, okay, now just sit on your hands, of course they're going to be mad at you. I would be mad at you because this is so much more fun. You're not giving me anything to do. So I know as a working parent who is also at home, and for the past 2.5 years, my wife and I have been working from home. And when my kids are done, what do I transition them to? Just stay there and be quiet because I'm going to be now presenting to a great group of families. Today it's like, whoa, what are we transitioning them to? What are we giving them as that next option? Sometimes, especially for our younger kids, like our little ones that are just gaining access to these devices in some shape or form, you're moving them from an activity that's incredibly engaging, that's keeping their attention, into now sit there. And of course, the reaction is going to be screams or upsetness or feeling like that was actually, I was into that. How are we going to transition you now to something maybe in person or physical that it doesn't have to be just as fun, but it's transitioning into something active versus something that's very passive and unengaging. So those are things that we as parents should really be thinking about as we're trying to kind of navigate that. It's time to get off.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, what is the why and what is the opportunity from that?
Yeah, finding a nice balance.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on what Merv said there as well about kids' perception is, and also what John said about kind of like the time limit, right? Like in our own experience with our child, and even I have older nieces and nephews that we are with a lot as well. And same with like myself as well, like there's educational tools, there's games, but there's also that time when as all parents, you want a mental, just a break where you just want to zone out and watch something for fun, for a laugh. I think our kids need the same thing. So it's all about, like in our own personal experience, our son is 3, and like John was saying, he likes to watch cars, all that kind of stuff. That's not, there's educational aspects about it, but for him, hey, 15 minutes, you can watch, what he's watching, but you're watching the fun that makes you laugh and giggle. And he knows once a day he gets his 15 minutes, and we do set a timer. It does work in our house, our child's young, but we do set a timer. You have 15 minutes, go watch your fun stuff. And the rest of the day, he knows in the afternoon, if he asks to have his screen, his tablet, that he can play a game. So he knows that. We started young, but I mean, for those that have older kids, it can be different. But for him, he knows in the morning he can watch something fun. In the afternoon, it's an educational thing, and then he's cut off, right? So with other parents that have older kids, that may be hard, but again, it's all about their perception. Like Merve was saying as well, where it's like, okay, put your screens down, like they're into something, they're really active about it, and this is, we take it away, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna have dinner together so we can sit as a family, or it's gonna be family game night, or after at this certain time we're gonna go out and throw the ball or go swimming or something like that, right? There has to be another outlet for them.
Yeah, there is a difference. It's funny what the perception is with tablets and screens and computers in general, but you can give a child a pencil and a word search and watch them do it on a piece of paper, or you can do that on a tablet. And if Merv was to come over to my house one day and walk in and see my kids on a piece of paper or the pencil doing a word search, might feel differently than if you saw them on a tablet. Maybe not Merv, actually, probably a bad example. But the average parent may walk in and kind of see that and say, oh, your kid's on a tablet. Yeah, but you're doing the exact same thing you would have been doing with a piece of paper and a pencil. So again, it's really, what are they doing? And one thing I want to touch on, being we're coming out of this pandemic and stuff like that, I know a recent survey showed that about 80% of people in the US, or parents in the US, lost childcare throughout this whole thing. And we're working from home and everything. So just try not to be too hard on yourself about all this, because as adults, we have responsibilities and bills to pay and things like that. And sometimes our child has to go on a tablet for half an hour or an hour, whatever. If we have a meeting and it has to be done, it has to be done. And it's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I think a lot of it is understanding what they're doing. As Kim mentioned, we give our son where you can trace letters and do the alphabet and things like that on his tablet. And it's easy. There's no mess to clean up afterwards either, right? So there are a lot of positives in that respect too. So
And I just actually, if I could just jump in, I love James. Thank you for your thought there. James brought up in the chat that boredom is not a bad idea at all, and I 100% agree. It's one of the reasons why devices aren't allowed in the car. Like when we go on long drives, you know, the girl's like, "Oh, I'm so bored." I'm like, "You know what? Stare outside. Like, here's what you like playing video games. Imagine your favorite character jumping on the light poles now as you drive by. Like, use your imagination, figure it out." So I 100% agree with you, James. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, in the transition, I didn't mean to say that every transition has to be glitzy and glamoury, but we need an explanation. You need to be able to explain, you know what, I need you to get off now because I need your brain to rest. And if you enjoy doing this, go make your own game. Like, get a piece of paper and pencil and figure it out, right? And so that's what I meant about finding that transition. So I really appreciate the note, because that is true. You know, part of kids developing and growing is being able to face, you know, some of those challenges, as simple as, I don't know what to do with myself right now. Well, you know what, go figure it out. I think one of the problems, however, is go figure it out. When I was a kid, used to be go outside and figure it out. And we're not letting them do that as much. And so how do we balance that on, you know, inside the house? Don't make a mess either.
I want to bring up a funny example from this past year, which really made me think about some of this stuff. Is so this basketball team that I coached, we were on a bus and we were 3 hours away from our home here, and we were waiting to play a game. We had a lot of time to kill. So I had my toddler and my wife with me. They travel with us sometimes. And we went to a playground, where it's on the lake where the kids can do whatever they were going to do. And then we were going to take our toddler to the playground. And to my surprise, actually, these teenagers, aged 14 to 16, they started playing some version of tag and were running around chasing each other. I was actually quite surprised. I just thought they would all just sit there on their phones. So I was very happy to see that. It kind of reminded me more of my childhood than just having them, you know, find a park bench and just sit there on their phone. So I was pleasantly surprised. I'll just throw that up there.
Parents actually got annoyed. They kind of scared the little kids off the playground because you had 20, you know, what were they, 15-year-old kids running onto the playground in the swing. So it was quite funny, but it was good to see. It made us both be like, this is awesome. This is what kids, you know, should be doing more of. So
For sure.
Did want to jump in real quick and say that, you know, obviously it's not just kids that are losing the ability, or whose ability to deal with boredom or downtime. It's all of us. You know, I mean, I was in New York a few weeks ago, and I'm sitting there waiting for the subway, and it's just everyone. It is so easy to pick, you know, to take out your phone. It's everywhere, you know, and so adults are modeling right and left, everywhere and all the time, that it's not okay to do nothing, that when you do nothing, you take out your phone and you look at pictures, or you read your email, or you go on YouTube, and it's, you know, ages 0 to 80. So it's just, I mean, I even caught my 85-year-old dad looking at animal videos on Instagram. Daddy, what are you doing?
For the younger kid, like for adults, we also have the added distraction of targeted advertisements that take us down rabbit holes and want and literally bid money for our attention. And that's something that I think, as all parents with toddlers or young children on tablets and screens and stuff, that's something we definitely have to be mindful of as well. There are options out there for social media sites without ads and stuff like that for kids, but the more famous ones, the big name ones, you know, they're all running advertisements for your attention. Something we have to talk to our kids about and be very aware of.
Yeah, for sure. All good feedback. I think we touched on it a little bit, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, like boundaries, and so not necessarily like a boundary of like time, right? Here's your, you know, 30 minutes on the screen or whatever, but you know, how do we really know what my kid is doing online, right? How do we really know? And then how do we help establish the boundaries with them, you know? And I kind of want to talk about that, like in collaboration. Like as a parent, like I don't want to always do this. Like, this is the boundary. I want to work together, you know, with my kids. I've, you know, personally 11 and a half and 8-year-old, like I want to work together to set boundaries. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Good, John,
I'll
Kim,
jump in.
you guys.
I'll just jump in quickly with what I think with boundaries too. It really is about open conversation, and I think every parent-child relationship is different as far as like with trust with your children as well, right? And what they're doing along with that. I think that every child is different, and when they go online with social media, especially, they find a lot of like-minded individuals that they connect with in that aspect, right? So as far as boundaries and time limits and stuff like that, it's really about knowing what your child's doing, and then whatever they say they're doing. Like a lot of people like Snapchat and Instagram, all that kind of stuff. A lot of parents aren't quite sure what that is about, but luckily, online research, you can kind of dive in and find out a lot about what it is exactly. And then a lot of apps now have limitations and safety features and all that kind of stuff you can do as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think other ways, and something I like to really, always kind of remind parents. I mean, when I was growing up, the music that I listened to, my parents just didn't understand why I listened to the music that I liked, or the kind of like I was really into breakdancing and all this stuff. They thought that was going to be something that was just going to lead me to getting injured, getting into the wrong crowd and all of that. But even though they didn't understand what I was into or why I like certain things, they instilled certain ethics and expectations in the way that I treated people, and the way that I thought about my priorities, and the way that I looked at the way I spent my time. And those values, because they were consistent and because they reinforce them in everything we do, those values stuck with me regardless of the situations or the spaces I found myself in. I would always have them in the back of my head, and I was a reflection of those values. And so technology and the access and the types of experiences that kids are going to run into, we can do everything we can to try and filter out inappropriate content, to try and only allow for access to aspects of certain games or interactives. And we should be thoughtful about doing those things, and we should set those things in place. But we should also continue to reinforce our values and ideas and provide the language for our kids when they do run into things that might not be appropriate to them, to that potentially make them feel uncomfortable. And everything, and all the time that we've been talking with kids who have been given opportunities to access then like social media or watching YouTube or playing video games, when they have a parent that they know that, oh, I ran into this, what do I do? And a parent and the way they meet them is with, tell me a little bit more about it. What happened? What's the situation? How did it make you feel? What can you do different next time? Here's what we need to do next time. When you're met with that response, they're more apt to come to you again when they run into something that's uncomfortable or maybe that they weren't prepared for. But if it's met with, what, give it to me, we're done, it's gone. When we take away something that very much feels like their primary form of connection to family and to friends, then it becomes harder for them to trust you as a parent to come to you when there's an issue. So obviously it all depends on the situation, right? If it's a situation of high severity, high bullying, high anxiety, and those issues, you need to be removed from those things and really dive deeper and understand like what's happening, what are the issues, who do we need to elevate this to? If not, what do we need to do now just to kind of take that break and really understand where we're at, so you can feel comfortable about this space and I can feel comfortable about you at this space, and then provide them, okay, if this happens again, what do we do? What do you do? How can I help you? Here's what I'm here for. And that's part of one of the ways to kind of work with your kid and try better understanding kind of and navigating as, a tool that you felt was safe and felt was comfortable could very easily have an update next week that then introduces a situation that goes awry, right? And so we want to do everything we can to provide them filtered, safe spaces, but we also need to build up the filter between their ears to make sure that when they do see something or something does happen that was unexpected, they know they can come to you or a trusted person that can help guide them through it, and then be able to navigate how to get around those things next time. Because even like, John and Kim, I know that your child likes trucks. There's a family that we were testing out, like their child loves Thomas the Train, and they were watching great like Thomas the Train videos that were not like the opening type, the kinds that were like, watch some kid open up another Thomas the Train Engine like video, like enough of those. Just they like Thomas the Train, but they were only 7 clicks away from train wrecks based on the way that algorithms work. So understanding how these things work so that we can continue to foster, a good experience with things that are bringing enjoyment, that they are learning from, are amazing things. But we do need to understand how they work, even minimally, so that we can help guide them, and know that we can be an ongoing resource as we navigate through them.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I was just going to add on to some of the stuff that Merve was saying there. As far as technology goes, it is a fairly new topic to parents, but as far as parents having to deal with some sort of new thing, it's not new. When you sit there and you study about screen use, your first reaction is to maybe go back to television. And when television was first introduced, and the worries about that in your home and your kids sitting too close to the TV and all this kind of stuff. But if you go back further, in 1930s, there was articles written about the radios in the home and how parents were worried about the radios 24/7 a day, that they couldn't control or monitor what that was doing. And then if you go back even further, there's articles written about new dances like the waltz and the Charleston, and now we have twerking. So like, there's always something going on for parents that's new and unencountered. But I think the skills that parents need remain the same, and that is to have this communication level with your child where it's not completely authoritative, where, like Merv said, you don't just snatch something away from them. Kids are, what we found, and I think a lot of you know, kids are smarter than you think, right? So you can't just take it away with no reasoning. Even though they may not understand the full implications of it, you still need to give them some sort of reasoning about, what's so dangerous about this device, or maybe without scaring them away from it too much, but just teaching them how to navigate the waters that they're in. It's just super important.
Perfect.
But I think that also, when I was a kid and I was out with my friends and stuff like that, my parents didn't necessarily know what I was doing either, but there was a trust there. I was gone for hours at a time, riding my bike and doing whatever. And I had equal opportunities to run into some non-wholesome friends or individuals that could show me scary stuff or whatever it was. Obviously, it's a little bit easier at the touch of a finger now. But again, I go back to this. It is all about communication and that trust bond between parents, and just trying to help them navigate that world that they're in and they're learning every day about as well.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's an important point. I want to just draw attention to the chat. Yeah, thanks, Merv. I was hoping we could actually talk this through. Louise had asked about, how do you see where your kids have been? And, the kids can erase the browsing history and just, and I think a few of you are kind of feeling that way too. Like, how do I really know? And so, so I know, Merv, you said, can you just elaborate a little bit on what you typed, Merv? And,
Sure.
just, and feel free, John and Kimberly too, just to talk about that, because I definitely think, like, we want to talk tangible, right? Like what can I take away in terms of a strategy, or a tool to use? Sure.
Yeah. So, I would say yes, there are a number of tools that are kind of built in, and you'll find, especially in mobile devices, their operating systems are trying more and more to think about kind of the safety implications of kids that are using their devices. And so there are things like screen time that has kind of like Apple has one called Screen Time, and Android phones have another one that have kind of a minimal view at what your kids are seeing and doing or spending their time. And you can even block access to those if they're tied into your accounts. But if you do have that savvy kid who knows exactly how to search incognito or kind of browse and delete history, and you feel like there's a concern for that, you feel like that there might be some they're acting in a way where it's like, okay, maybe what they're exploring some things and they're starting to act a little differently, and it's of concern. I need to go further and really get a sense of what they're doing. Then you can look into other products that are out there. They've got products or apps that you can install. Like I shared some earlier, and there's another list here, like around Bark, Nanny Canopy. Yeah, but those are exactly, there's a number of them, and some of them are actual devices you connect onto your router that kind of do it as a third, a third route. to kind of view what's happening. Others are apps that you install. And another way, some ways that I've done it, like my kids, I've got a 9 and 11-year-old, so very similar to yours, Lauren. Their phones, text messages are aligned into my ID. So whenever they're texting back and forth with their friends, it's on my computer. And I let them know that. I'm like, I'm not here trying to screen and watch, but as you are building up, your independence and the way that you shape your friendships, I want to make sure that I can just be there immediately for it. And I've had that discussion with them. I give them that language for them, but there are ways that you can mask the way that they use things on their device shows up on your device as well. YouTube has everything. So you can look and see how you're able to potentially set something up like that. If again, you feel that need. I think the one area, and this is something we continue to, as an organization, we know that, kids are going to try on different hats and they're going to explore. And it's developmentally appropriate for them to do that. And we want to be able to give them that space. But if you do find that there are things that make you feel uncomfortable or some red flags in the way that they're acting, and you feel like you need to go this direction, especially, for your older kids, then yeah, I mean, there's plenty of these things that you can just do a quick search for and find some access to. When they're little, it's easier to guide them through these things and just here's all you have access to, and you can really easily curate for them. Once they get older, that's when it gets a little harder. And so finding that balance between developing them to be trustworthy individuals, like our parents did when we were off, talking with our friends in the corner. But who knows what, Mike or John brought from home that we're now all looking at in the corner. But now they're just doing that all on a device. But again, that has implications because the ease of access is pretty easy when you think about online. So yeah, that's what I would say to that. But John, Kim, please. Oh yes, and then Karen.
Can I jump in? I just had some thoughts. I wrote in the chat, a lot of school districts are using Go Guardian. So that's something you can advocate for your school board or your district. And it's actually a pretty cool thing. And I have spoken to a couple superintendents that it's saved some kids' lives, which is terrific. I have two 20-year-olds. So speaking from the other end, I will just share a couple of ideas that when they were young, we actually talked to them about what research said about technology use repeatedly in a really nice way, like in a really positive way, but letting them know like what was healthy, what wasn't healthy, how much time, the impact of social media that can happen for levels of anxiety, and we shared that with them over years as they got to be of age that we could no longer police them, or of age and we felt comfortable not policing them because they understood like, okay, I've arrived at this porn site. I'm now making a conscious decision. I understand from my parents that if I see this, it's going to impact my perception of something beautiful, they're understanding that they're getting to that crux moment when they're 16, 17 years old. They're in the control seat. I can look at this or I can not look at it. They anticipated what it would be like. I mean, that's not comforting to think that maybe your kids, but they are going to be looking because that's natural. That's what kids do, 16, 17 years old. And, I can say I was really anxious about it. And I talked to kids, I talked to 24, 25-year-old cousins, and they said to me, lay off. You know what? They're fine. They're fine. This is what's out in the world. They're going to be okay. Talk to them about it. And that's what we did. They set timers for themselves because of the research that we shared with them. I mean, I know that sounds ideal, and it was, but I guess what I'm saying, even if you can't reach the ideal, start early, educate them, put them in the driver's seat, say to them, it's been shown to cause anxiety. How much have you been on your phone? It's really not good to look at your phone before bed, and talk to them and develop that culture in your household. I just have two more little things to point out that I have learned from my kids and their friends. And for some kids that have social anxiety, it can be a miracle, okay? The texting, the social media, it can be a miracle because it allows them to socialize in a way that is comfortable for them. You know, instead of being afraid of the banter that happens at school, they can carry it on their phones, and they can think, and they have the time to process it, you know? And so there's nice things like that. And something else I just wanted to share is that for kids that have any sort of neurodiversity, or, you know, the 20% of our youth that are now, you know, on varying gender spectrums and sexual orientation, it's a miracle for a kid who's living in a heterosexual household. If he's gay or she's gay or gender fluid or queer, there's a whole world out there that your heterosexual parents can't offer. Like there's no, you know, so that a child needs to be, a teenager, right, an older, needs to be able to go out, find communities, find information. And so I just really want to plug that, and plug developing the responsibility, helping your kids develop their own sense of responsibility for their computer use and their research and what's out there, and being really clear about it. Done. Off my soapbox.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of touch on what Karen just said there about that aspect is, you know, going online and finding like-minded people, and also kids in general that aren't comfortable talking to their parents or even close friends and family. They have the internet at their fingertips where they can go on, and yes, they can find bad stuff too, but they can also go on and research stuff that they're just not comfortable talking about, which is huge. And it really starts with open communication at a young age. So parents that, you know, like for us, we have a young son, but technology really in the last 5 and 10 years has just blown up huge. So as a parent, you know, based on your individual relationship with your child, you know, talking to them about what they're watching, what they're doing. But if you just have those fears, those insecurities, like Merve was touching on, and we put up some of those, like Bark, Easy, M-Spy, Norton, they do have features where you can, you know, see what they're texting about, see what they're doing on Facebook. You can GPS. That is available. It is good to be open and not, you know, really be spying on your children. Let them know that, you know, it is there, and that, but it kind of gives you that protection that, you know, if you're not sure what exactly they're doing out there.
I was just going to touch on something, Karen, that you brought up. You know, technology is great for anyone with any kind of special needs or autism or things like that. What their studies have shown with autism is that it's a predictable environment, some of these games and things. So I can make them feel a lot more comfortable. I have a niece that's autistic, and one thing she does is she likes to draw and things like that. And, you know, she's very active on that. And if you want to talk to her about it, she'll talk to you about it all night, right? So it's very engaging in that way, where sometimes people, some special needs anyways, will have a tendency to kind of go into their own world and maybe not be as open. In this case, she can draw on the computer, she can share drawings on the computer, and she can also interact with people with very specific similar interests. She's actually interested in coding video games. And that's something that she can find other people that want to talk about coding, want to talk about video games. And it has really been really good for her for that. One kind of tip I wanted to throw out there to some of the parents and stuff is kids these days have a lot of friends on social media. If you have any nieces, nephews, or cousins that are somewhere in that age range and will just friend them on those platforms, they can also kind of act as a little bit of a spy for you. Not so much so that it's, you know, a negative thing, but there's just kids are posting all the time, and maybe they don't want their parents on there. But for example, for my sister's kids, I am their friends on social media, right? And I don't interact with them necessarily on Snapchat or whatnot, but I'm there and I see their posts. And when I see some things that, you know, maybe warrant a discussion, I call my sister and I say, you know, like she kind of posted this, or, you know, and that will hopefully on their side open up a conversation and whatnot, right? So it is spying in some sense, but at the same time, you know, I'm just the friendly uncle that wants to be their friend on social media, right? So.
No, I think that's great. And you're quiet, and then they forget.
Yeah,
They
well,
forget
exactly.
you're there.
Hundreds and hundreds of friends. So they don't even know you're there, right? So.
Yeah.
Or 1.3 million, John. I mean,
that's unreal. Yeah. That's another thing about social media and stuff that I think is really important to talk to kids about. And, you know, the whole thing about getting likes and all this kind of stuff. Every once in a while, I think that's something that people maybe of a different generation do, but I'll clean out my friends list every once in a while, and I'll kind of look at it and think, if I saw this person across the street, would I walk across the street to go have a conversation with them? Or would I just keep going and hope they didn't even notice me, kind of thing? And I think with a lot of kids on social media, they have so many friends that they wouldn't even recognize half of them if they saw them. But I think it kind of gets out of hand, and then to actually place, I don't know, importance on whether or not they like things that you post. You know, it's kind of absurd when you put it into a certain context that way. So I think it's really important to bring that up with our kids. That, yeah, they're called friends online, like they're your friends, but in reality, are they really? You know, so you still have to be careful about what you're posting around these people. If you have 1.3 million followers, you know, like there's no way you know them all.
Right.
Do you think we could talk about some? Are you okay, Lauren? Did I?
I was just going to ask Merve a question, but I want to hear yours first, and then we'll go back, because it might be this. It might be the same thing.
Well, no, it made me think about some constructive, really brilliant uses for this technology. You know, I think about relationship building in families and connection and global connection, kids creating, you know, as outlets for their creativity, creating websites, you know, it's a place where online portfolios. So I guess I'd like to put it out there, like, let's talk about some of the really positive ways that we can steer our kids to using the technology actively, right? Not even just passively, but like, what are some active ways that we can channel the use of technology for our kids at home or at school? So.
I mean, I think there's just been so many great stories that we've already seen that, like, I mean, like right now, you all are, at least in the East Coast, you guys are being hit with some decent weather. And there are places that have been like hit with some unfortunate situations, and kids took to online to gather GoFundMe pages and create, you know, things that like bracelets that they create for the community and start selling them to raise money to help a family, help a local charity. I mean, kids are doing amazing things, and they're learning how they can leverage the power and connectivity of these social spaces in ways that we never could, which was very much just about word of mouth and never got past the county line. So there are incredible opportunities where kids are able to kind of flex some of their talents and, you know, be able to kind of do it for good. And so many of these, you know, these young kids, young entrepreneurs, young social leaders, you know, are doing this already. I think those are great opportunities, great things to share with your own kids. If you're wondering, oh, how do I get them to start thinking about these things? I think where we need to be careful is, like one of the things we mentioned, the 1.3 million followers, you got to remember that now turns from social value to dollar value. And so there's reasons why kids are like, you know, trying to get these millions. They're trying to turn this into, you know, their primary source of kind of like funding, where they're willing to, when I grew up, you didn't want to be a sellout. And now it's like encouraged, be a sellout because you get paid. And for me, I was like, you know, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to sell out. You know, I'm doing these things because I believe in them, or because I want to do something constructive or do something positive, not just like the highest bidder. I'll go ahead and, you know, put your product and showcase it and bring you the followers. We've become the ultimate marketing tool, and our kids are the ultimate marketers. But that's, you know, those aren't resume builders in many ways, unless you become that big explosive one. But it's the thing they see the most, and then they start to feel like, what are the top 10 things? What are the top 5 things you want to do when you grow up? Being a YouTuber or a TikTok star are like one of the top 5s now. And so really, you know, talking to your kids about what does that mean? Like this like 20-second video probably took 8 hours to create. Like, you need to know the life. Let's give you a real insight into what that means, right? And how does that really translate into an opportunity? So they really understand, you know, the implications of that work. So, you know, I've already lost the direction I was going. I felt like I was on a roll for something, but me, John, and Kim.
Louise wrote in about Greta, by the way. Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Oh yes, good old Greta.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the positives is social, kind of like Merv said about followers and all that kind of stuff with young kids, kind of going more into like teenagers and young adults. Is I mean, YouTube is huge right now. I mean, you can't deny that. And a positive thing is that a lot of people can get discovered there, where artists and people that have talent, musical, singing, anything like that, doing decorating, finishing furniture, anything like that, you can actually showcase it. And it can become a career for some people, where also people that are like socially just shy in situations, right? Behind a screen, they feel more comfortable. So it's a really good outlet for people. Also with online too, where physical wise, like the Wii and PlayStation and the way that goes is physical games where you actually are physically in your home. And a lot of times when kids kind of get on there and they're doing it virtually, it kind of makes them want to get outside and do it as well, play soccer, hockey, that kind of stuff as well. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, there's studies that showed for a lot of these big games that are huge worldwide games where a ton of people will log in at once. It's kind of teaching people to trust each other and band together to solve a problem. Gamers will spend hours online to try and accomplish some sort of mission. And here you are in a world where you don't know people and you're joining online to accomplish this mission with somebody, trusting that they will put forth their best effort with you. So it's kind of funny when you think about it that way. I was never into these kind of big games, but the World of Warcraft games that were really popular, there's thousands of people online and they're bonding together to try and achieve this one goal in their game, which kind of bodes well for humans in general, right? You're just bonding together with people you don't know to try and solve world problems. And kids learn this at a young age. It sounds kind of funny, but when I was growing up, it was about Nintendo and it was a solo game. You sat by yourself, you played the game, and maybe you go to school the next day and you talk with your friends about how far they made it, and then you want to make it further and stuff like that, but you didn't actually play with them. And now you're online playing with them, accomplishing goals together. Is actually a really, really neat thing when you start thinking about teamwork and communication online, which is completely different. What we're doing now is a fairly new thing, being on this virtual meeting. It's something that I had to learn in my professional development as a project manager. It's something that I have to learn to run meetings with 30 people all virtually, right? So these are tools that our kids are actually learning today, growing up, playing video games. So we have to kind of shift our perspective just a little bit on that and think about, yeah, it looks like they're by themselves, sitting in their room playing a game, but their headsets on, they're talking to people, they're interacting with people, and they're working together to build something positive. And yeah.
Thank you.
I know. I love that you brought that up, John. I mean, the reality is some of these games, I mean, granted, when they get older, they start to play games where they're a little bit more kind of adult feeling, just in terms of like first person shooters and that stuff. It may not, feel good to see them playing those types of games, but a lot of those games are meant to become more cartoonish and stuff like that. But in the back end of it, there is a lot of coordination happening in terms of like creating strategy and trying to meet them a certain goal. And that is actually one of the great, types of ways that kids and teens and for those kinds of games are learning to build and collaborate. But then you look at more age specific and younger ones, you're looking at Minecraft and other times of grids where now they can collaborate on building scenes and scenarios and their own games that they can then play. And so you can get that same experience with more appropriate type of gameplay. And kids can start playing these things now if they have got access to these types of devices. But again, as a parent, how do you connect them to, oh man, what you did there? Like, let's try to build that with the Legos we have laying around the house. Oh, this is how architects begin. This is how engineers begin. These are how people start to build games, is they create it first before they start coding the games. And so connecting it to the real world and then connecting it to opportunities, especially when, well, in some communities, kids don't know that these are real jobs. They may not see people in their community with those jobs, but they're really interested in some of the foundational aspects of them. As a parent, we can really help foster those things.
And one thing I want to bring up too is the perception of gamers. 70% of gamers are 18 and over. All right, so it's not like kids do play a lot of games, but it's generally as people transition into the adult life where they really dig into video games. So at the early age, you're talking about Minecraft and stuff like that. There's also violence in Minecraft. there's creepers and things that come around and stuff like that. So even at the younger ages, the Roblox games are another game where kids are building and stuff. Fortnites and stuff. There is violence and the stuff that we have to talk about and discuss with our children, but at the same time, there's cooperative aspects and a lot of positives as well. So it's not causing irreparable damage to see this kind of violence, but violence is also human nature. So it's a good opportunity to really talk.
There's negative and positive in everything. Like you said, Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite are huge right now from kids as young as like 7 and up. And when you think about, you know, a lot of it is team building. You know, making relationships, building stuff, money, you know, having to save to be able to buy the next thing. There's positive and negatives with both, but those are just huge with kids right now.
And when you talk to your kids about it and they'll say, oh, I got like, you know, 25 kills today or something like that. Kills means points, you know, like it's kind of like a different way of looking at it. I know it's just hearing that word is a scary word, but really they're talking about how many points they got, and they're going to compete with their friend who got X amount of points. And it's, you know, it's just a different term nowadays. I guess it's become a lot more acceptable to use a term like that. But in general, they're just competing with their friends, talking with their friends and stuff like that online.
Thanks for that reminder, John. I needed that.
Now, if you hear your kid in the other room going, yes, headshot, it's because they got a lot of points, right?
Yeah, I say stay on the sports games. I don't know. But that's my issue probably, right? I got to work through that, which you guys are helping me do. So thank you very much. But I know we're kind of closing in on time. And so I didn't know from our participants, if there's any questions, you know, that they wanted to ask. Again, you're welcome to ask in the chat or unmute. I also wanted to talk to you, Merve, and I'm wondering if you can spend just a couple of minutes talking to us about common sense as a resource for folks, and like, what can I as a parent find on your page? How can I navigate it? So if I have a kid that wants the Snapchat app, how can I find out about that? How can I do my research there?
Sure. Yeah. So Common Sense, we are a nonprofit organization, and our whole focus is really dedicated to improving the lives of kids and families by providing trustworthy information, education, and an independent voice when it comes to navigating media and technology. And I'd say the easiest way to think about some of the ways that educators or that parents use Common Sense, they typically come to our site to look at our ratings and reviews for all media content. So there's shows coming out like on Netflix this week. You know, what's appropriate. Disney Plus is putting out some, you know, new shows this week. What do I need to look out for? Like, what is this rated developmentally for a kid? And the reality, there's a lot of rating systems out there, and a lot of those rating systems are starting to push the envelope around what's appropriate for kids for the sake of getting more audience. So something that says PG-13 might actually not be good for all 13-year-olds. So what we do is you can go in and you can look at our review for like, let's see, Sonic the Hedgehog is out. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is coming out in movie theaters. And it's a PG, but we rated it at 8+ because we needed to look at developmentally, what are kids gonna expect to see when they watch this? And so things that you'll look at a review, it'll tell you essentially, why is this good for 8+? How much violence, what are what educational value, positive messages, are there positive role models? What's the representation look like in terms of people that are there? How much sexy stuff or bad language or consumerism? Much like a nutritional label, you can get a sense of what's in this thing. And then what are things I should know as a parent? What are conversations I can have with my child after I watch this or play this game? What are the main themes that we can discuss? And so our goal is to provide an easy portal for families to get some deep insights into any of these media pieces and give them as much information as they need to make, a informed decision for themselves. So that's one way that you can use Common Sense. And then another way is, it's not just rating and reviewing media like shows, but also what is TikTok? What is YouTube? We've got what we created called Ultimate Guides, which essentially does a deep dive into what is TikTok? Where did it come from? Where did it originate from? What's ByteDance? That used to be TikTok. Why did it change? Who bought it? What are the implications of that? What are the privacy implications of this? Why do kids like it? What are terms you should be looking out for as a parent? how might you use it as an opportunity to do something with your children or grandchildren or kids that you're a part of in your community. So that ultimate guide is a good way of taking a deep dive into a single product that a lot of your kids are into and really thinking about. So that's the common sense media side. And then we've also got common sense education, which if you work with educators, and something you were mentioning earlier, it's like, oh yeah, let your educators know about like Go Guardian and tools like that. There are a number of tools that educators are using that require technology. And we know that educators are also doing their best to empower kids, not just to give them the access in schools, but to think critically about the way that they're using technology in schools. And so we've got curriculum and resources that educators can gain access for free to be able to embed into the classroom, because technology is such a big part of the way our kids learn and our educators teach. So it's a free site for anyone, just commonsense.org, and you can jump in there and start to access any of that content, any of those resources.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I think that that's a great tool for folks, and it sounds like there's so much on there that, but I mean, you can take your time going through it, and you can use it to your specific need at a specific time. So that's really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So are there any questions from folks out there as we wrap? It's almost bedtime over here.
Sure.
Again.
Yeah. I just wanted to say I really loved what Karen said about, allowing a little bit of trust, in your kids. I look back, my kids are freshmen and juniors in high school, and I kind of wish I had done a little bit more of the technology monitoring and more communication. So I loved what I've gotten about like asking more questions and being more interactive. Yeah, it's been really, really helpful. And for the people that have younger kids, like start as soon as you can. I really look back on it, and I wish, like, when they were 6, we decided to give them a little bit of technology. We didn't hand deliver it to them more and have more dialogue about it. So, you can't go back and rewrite the past, but moving forward into the future with more information is so helpful. So thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, we had a speaker last year, a guy that by the name of Pete Hall, that wrote a book called Developing Resilient Learners. He's pretty famous at this point. He's a cool guy, but he said a really smart thing. He said, don't make the technology, either you're on technology or you're with your family, right? You can, and I think that both Merve and John and Kim, they've both alluded to this as well. Like, use the tools that they love, the kids love, as a way to interact with them, and to show interest in what they're interested in, because that relationship building on their terms is so important. And that's your avenue to that trust and the communication. So it's really just beautiful.
Yeah, we have to realize, as we've touched on before, that this is the world they're coming up in. And it's kind of funny. I had computers when they first came out and learned how to type and all that kind of stuff. But my wife's family was a little bit behind, and it became somewhat detrimental early on in her professional career, in the sense that she wasn't tech savvy.
Yeah, like Louise's commented, I like that. She said, start young with when you can, because like John just said that my family, my father especially, was very anti-tech. Like, we didn't have a computer in the home. He wouldn't let us have Nintendo, all that kind of stuff. So, and I was born in '82, so I graduated in 2000. So when I left high school was right when cell phones were just kind of coming out, right? So our whole like high school life was completely different than kids growing up in, it's not a tool, it's an environment now. So starting young and kind of like accepting it and teaching them and educating them about how to use it safely and dangers out there and is really, really important.
I just want to touch on too, like, obviously it's kind of in the back of everyone's mind about addictions and stuff like that, about being online and screen use and stuff. But there's kind of just some basic things, like, to kind of ask yourself, because maybe they do spend a bit of time online, but maybe they're really into research and stuff, and maybe you just don't know. But if your child's not sleeping enough, or if they're not physically healthy, or if you see them disengaging socially with family and friends, or like how are they doing in school? Are they pursuing any hobbies? Like these are kind of the things, the signs of addiction that are almost the same on every type of addiction. But if they're just having fun and learning in their digital media, then sometimes it's not bad to have them online for a period of time. Again, it goes back to what we started with this entire conversation about the quality of things. But just it's a scary world, and I know that because it's new and it's constantly changing. It's changing faster than we can even keep up with. And to think that the iPhone and the smart screen or whatever smartphones are only 16 years old. They came out in 2005, so 16, 17 years old, but it feels like a lifetime. It's just crazy how fast things are changing, and really it's just, again, I just want to say it's all about being mindful of it, being mindful of where they're at in their life and their social circles, being aware of how we grew up is not the same as how they grew up. We can't hit them with the same pressures. Kids now have a lot of different pressures that we didn't have. When they leave school, problems at school can now follow them home. When we've talked about that with bullying and stuff like that. So it is a completely different world, that maybe it's a good thing to let your child go online and just relax with a dumb video for half an hour, because maybe their school day was pressured, and then they got home and they received messages that were bullying or harassing messages. Maybe they just need to zone out for a minute. It's not always a bad thing. It's just about staying on top of it and being aware of it is all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly, thank you for that, John. I think reality is, like, how much can we empower our kids with the language and the knowledge of how these things work, so that they're making really strong decisions and that we can guide them in how to make those decisions. The reality is these tools are built to monetize their attention. We live in very much an attention economy. The online world's an attention economy. The more time you spend looking at something, the more value it is to any social media place, any game, any Netflix, anything like that. So they build them on purpose to keep your attention. So when we empower our kids, they have the power to say, no, not me. I'm going to stop when I want to stop, because I'm going to go outside now. Also, my dad told me it's time to go outside, so I'm gonna go outside. But for them, it's like they have the power to say, nope, I'm good, and be able to move on. And that's an opportunity of continuing to build that, that feeling that they have control. And oftentimes that is, it can very easily feel like you're out of control, or that you don't have control when something just, continues to get you stuck in a loop. But they're built that way, right? And so the more information we can give our kids, the more we can role model that for our kids, the more we can put that into practice and show them how to do it, the more they'll be able to do it themselves. And again, follows through with the way you build in your values, your expectations, to be, thoughtful, helpful, caring citizens in their community, online and off.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
That was the last word, folks. That was it. No. No, but seriously, I thank you so much. There are our panelists, John and Kimberly and Merve and Karen, and for all of you folks who joined us for this call. I am very grateful for your time and for your information. As a parent and as an educator who's trying to get the message out for folks, and to talk about these things, I'm very grateful for all of this time and this information. And I think we'll kind of wrap with, thank you, David. If you want to just type in the chat, maybe one word or one topic that resonated with you tonight, that would be great. Just everyone can kind of give a quick little something. I know the word balance just came up, and I said, yes, definitely balance is good. And I heard that loud and clear too. So if folks want to do that, that's great. No pressure, of course, but we'll put the link to the survey in the chat. But one thing before we go, I am going to just share my screen really quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you what you can expect to find. Hang on one second, folks. Okay. So you are going to get an email within 48 hours max from us all that are registered on this call. And so you will have these slides, a link to these slides, which you have access to. And then Merve and John and Kimberly put together some of their favorite resources for us. So you'll also have Merve's contact information, and it's okay with you, Merve, to reach out anytime, right? And also the website for commonsensemedia.org, which we talked a little bit about this evening. So these are great resources. And then John and Kimberly as well, their contact information. This is a copy of their book, and you can find it on Amazon. So I've been there.
Yeah, we've updated the book and cover since that one, but you'll find
perfect.
it. So it's mindful screen time now. Yep.
Oh, okay.
You'll find it there.
Okay, perfect. You've updated it. Awesome. Good. Well, you know what? Let me go in and I'll try to find the updated one, and then we can pop it in here. That would be good. But also John and Kimberly gave us some nice resources here as well. And I actually have watched that TED Talk, and that's a really good one. So thanks for including that. I was glad that you did. So.
And Lauren, I just put the survey link in the chat.
Great. Great. We have just some resources where we pulled some information from in the beginning of our conversation on one of those first slides, and we were chatting. Here's some other resources for you. And then your feedback survey. And that's really it.
Yeah. The link is in the chat, and then you'll have another chance. I think you said that, Lauren, in the email that you guys will get.
Yep.